Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodhanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yashodhanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yamuna Tiravanachari. Yamuna Tiravanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. 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 Jayam Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Astottara Sata Shri Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki. ISKCON's founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki. Shri Shri Radha Radhanath Sriman Mahaprabhu Ki. Gaur Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Prabhupada. Continuing the reading of Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 26. King Puranjana goes to the forest to hunt, and his queen becomes angry. Text number 13. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Tripta Rishta Sudripta Cha Kandarpa Akrishta Manasa Na Vyachashta Vara Aroham Grinim Grihamedinim Tripta Rishta Sudriptascha Tripta Rishta Sudriptascha Kandarpa Krishna Manasa Kandarpa Krishna Manasa Nyavachashta Vararoham Nyavachashta Vararoham Grihining Grihamedinim Grihining Grihamedinim Triptorishta Sudriptascha Kandarpa Krishna Manasa Navyachashta Vararoham Grihining Grihamedinim Triptorishta Sudriptascha Kandarpa Krishna Manasa Nyavyachashta Vararoham Grihining Grihamedinim Roham Grihinim Grihamedinim Tripta Rishta Sudriptascha Kandarpa Krishna Manasa Nyavachashta Vararoham Grihinim Grihamedinim. Vaishnavis. Triptorishta Sudriptascha Kandarpa Krishna Manasaha Nyavyachashta Vararoham Grihinim Grihamedinim Triptorishta Sudriptascha Kandarpa Krishna Manasaham Chasta Vararoham Grihinim Grihamedinim Tripta satisfied, rishta, joyful, sudripta, being very proud, cha, also, kandarpa, by Cupid, akrishta, attracted, manasa, his mind, na, did not, vyachashta, try, vara aroham, higher consciousness, grihinim, wife, grihamedhinim, one who keeps her husband in material life. Translation. After taking his dinner and having his thirst and hunger satisfied, King Puranjan felt some joy within his heart. Instead of being elevated to a higher consciousness, he became captivated by Cupid and was moved by a desire to find his wife, who kept him satisfied in his household life. Please repeat. After taking his dinner and having his thirst and hunger satisfied, King Puranjan felt some joy within his heart. Instead of being elevated to a higher consciousness, he became captivated by Cupid and was moved by a desire to find his wife, who kept him satisfied in his household life. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. This verse is very significant for those desiring to elevate themselves to a higher level of consciousness. When a person is initiated by a spiritual master, he changes his habits and does not eat undesirable eatables or engage in the eating of meat, the drinking of liquor, illicit sex or gambling. Sattvika ahara, foodstuffs in the mode of goodness, are described in the Shastras as wheat, rice, vegetables, fruits, milk, sugar, and milk products. Simple food like rice, dal, chapatis, vegetables, milk, and sugar constitute a balanced diet. But sometimes it is found that an initiated person, in the name of prasad, eats very luxurious foodstuffs. Due to his past sinful life, he becomes attracted by Cupid and eats good food voraciously. It is clearly visible that when a neophyte in Krishna consciousness eats too much, he falls down. Instead of being elevated to pure Krishna consciousness, he becomes attracted by Cupid. The so-called brahmachari becomes agitated by women, and the vanaprashta may again become captivated into having sex with his wife, or he may begin to search out another wife. Due to some sentiment, he may give up his own wife and come into the association of devotees and a spiritual master. But due to his past sinful life, he cannot stay. Instead of being elevated to Krishna consciousness, he falls down, being attracted by Cupid, and takes to another wife for sex enjoyment. The fall of the neophyte devotee from the path of Krishna consciousness down to material life is described in Srimad Bhagavatam 1.5.17 by Narad Muni. Tyaktva sadharmam charanam bhujam harer bhajan apakvo tapatet tato yadi yatra kvava bhadram abhud amushya kim kovar tapto bhajatam swadharmatva. This indicates that although a neophyte devotee may fall down from the path of Krishna consciousness due to his immaturity, his service to Krishna never goes in vain. However, a person who remains steadfast in his family duty or so-called social or family obligation, but does not take to Krishna consciousness, receives no profit. One who comes to Krishna consciousness must be very cautious and refrain from prohibited activities, as defined by Rupa Goswami in his Upadeshamrita. Atyahara prayasashcha prajalpo niyamagraha janasangascha lolyam cha shadbhir bhaktir vinashyati. A neophyte devotee should neither eat too much nor collect more money than necessary. Eating too much or collecting too much is called atyahara. For such atyahara, one must endeavor very much. This is called prayas. Superficially, one may show himself to be very much faithful to the rules and regulations, but at the same time not be fixed in regulative principles. This is called niyamagraha. By mixing with undesirable persons or janasanga, one becomes tainted with lust and greed and falls down from the path of devotional service. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshuran Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Jaina Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyas Chakripah Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shrivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Tripta Rishta Sudriptascha Kandarpa Krishna Manasaha Nyavachashta Vararoham Grihinim Grihamedinim. After taking his dinner and having his thirst and hunger satisfied, King Puranjan felt some joy within his heart. Instead of being elevated to a higher consciousness, he became captivated by Cupid and was moved by a desire to find his wife, who kept him satisfied in his household life. Srila Prabhupada begins the purport by saying that this verse is a very significant one for anyone desiring to advance in Krishna consciousness. And the rest of the purport, much of the purport is focused on how important it is to maintain a very strict observance of Krishna consciousness, a very strict practice of Krishna consciousness. It's quite highly emphasized by Srila Prabhupada. I was thinking about this a short while ago, that Srila Prabhupada is doing this, and in most cases, at least for me, maybe some of you could identify with this as well, if someone else had to say what Prabhupada is saying, we may not take it very seriously. It's all right. But when Srila Prabhupada comes out, and the way he does it in such an expert way, we have to take it seriously. And then I thought to myself this morning, just coming here, if I don't take it seriously from Prabhupada, then my spiritual life is over. Because I'm sure all of us, we have set our spiritual lives up in such a way that we have, how would you say, circles of protection that we willingly place around us. And sometimes these circles of protection that we place around us, my own intelligence, one circle, my own practices, my immediate association of my friends, my Shiksha gurus, or my Diksha guru, Prabhupada's purports, or Prabhupada himself. These are various rings of protection that we have. We may not take certain ones seriously. Sometimes we may, it's okay, my friends are saying this, what do they know? Or my Shiksha gurus, but they haven't seen me in quite a while. They don't really know what's going on, it's all right. Or even my Diksha guru may say something. We find that in certain devotees' lives. They may not even take. But at least the last outpost or the last circle of protection for our spiritual life has to be Srila Prabhupada's direction. And if I can't at least do that, having said that, if one disregards one's Shiksha or Diksha guru, then practically one is lost. And if one disregards Srila Prabhupada's statements or direction, then one is hopelessly lost, one would say. So at least we can take it from Srila Prabhupada. We could accept the authority and direction of Srila Prabhupada. And he makes it very clear. Again, this is a very significant purport. You see, the general tendency for people in this age of Kali is that it is natural for them to violate principles as much as is possible. The entire material world is running on this principle. It exists, it advances, it progresses on this principle to create situations, to facilitate experiences that are going to break the four principles of human life. This is what the whole world is made up of. And all the advertising, however nuanced it may be, no matter how pure it may look like out there, it's all focused on how to break the four regulative principles. And as it said, what's that statement? Water tends to find the lowest level. So it's a natural tendency for conditioned living beings to always look for opportunities to enjoy separately from Krishna. And enjoying separately from Krishna really means to violate the regulative principles. That is why for devotees, practicing devotees, like Ishopanishad says, it's very important to understand the difference between following the principles and not following them, and the dangers that can come up from not following them. So in this verse, or rather the purport, we are being given a brief study, a brief account of one aspect of the process of falling down. We know Krishna in the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, he speaks about the process of fall down. Anybody remember those two verses? It starts with just a little focus on something. Dhyayato vishayan pungsam. Just by contemplating, just by some attention on some form of sense gratification, then this step happens, that step happens, and before you know it, you are in a what? A whirlpool. One falls back down. Prabhupada uses the word whirlpool. Anybody seen a whirlpool? It whirls, and it's very hard to get out of it. Very hard to get out of it. This purport Prabhupada is providing some very important points to be very conscious of with regards to falling down. one has to become very vigilant. Shurasya dhara, the Katha Upanishad says that, Utishta jagrata, that we must wake up and realize the importance, the good fortune that we have of having a human form. And then further to that, being exposed to spiritual life by the mercy of a devotee. Generally it's the mercy, not generally, always it's by the mercy of some devotee that we have become exposed to spiritual life. We must appreciate the principles of the process that are involved and understand that to follow these principles we must be very cautious, because this process is like walking on a shurashya dhara, a razor's edge. One has to be very, very cautious. One of the prominent people in the American Revolution, Thomas Jefferson, he says, eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. Let's think about that. Eternal vigilance, which basically means constant care, constant attentions, is the price we have to pay for liberty or liberation or freedom from the trappings of the material world. Of course, Thomas Jefferson was saying it for some other reason, but it can be very nicely applied to our spiritual life. Vigilance comes from the word vigil, which means to pay careful attention, to stay awake and protect what you have. Because of this razor's edge, shurashya dhara, that we are walking on. So to stay on this razor's edge, to stay on this path of devotional service, one has to be very, very careful, because any inattention at any time can cause us to get cut. There was a time, I think when I first started shaving, I shaved with a menorah blade. Anybody remember the menorah blades? And it was very easy to get cut. Thank God for Gillette, Sensor, and what's the other one? Jayawat Prabhu was telling me about the other day. Fusion, the Fusion 5, yeah. Yeah. So to walk on a blade, one will get cut and one can fall away on this path. And this is the opinion, that verse in the Katha Upanishad says, this is the opinion of learned scholars and transcendentalists. And for us, Srila Prabhupada is our topmost learned scholar and transcendentalist. And so in this purport, he's giving very important instructions on how to avoid fall down for us as practicing devotees. So even beyond this class, we should try and read this purport repeatedly and take important lessons from there. Krishna in Bhagavad Gita, he says, Raga Dvesha Vimuktaishtu, that if a person is able to control their senses, if a devotee is able to control their senses through the regulative principles of freedom, we discussed this a few weeks ago, an interesting statement, the regulative principles of freedom. So if he regulates his senses through these principles, then he becomes free. He attains the mercy of Krishna. This is important. It almost seems counterintuitive, right? Regulative principles, following principles that keep us in check. And by that following, we become free. So how does one become free? Actually, in the 1960s, I'm not sure, I wasn't born, but some of you may have lived then and heard about the counterculture movement in America. The counterculture movement, or more commonly known as the hippie movement. What was their motto? Just freely enjoy your senses and then you'll taste freedom. Drink what you want, eat what you want, have sex with whoever you want with or what you want with, and you'll consider free. But where is the hippie movement today? They either died of STDs or OD'd on some drug, or most of them then went back into normal life. That's what happened. And who comes in the middle of this entire scene in America? Srila Prabhupada comes into this middle of this thing, and completely against the current of what was being promoted in the hippie movement, right? Just enjoy your senses in a indiscriminate way and you'll achieve freedom. Prabhupada is then bringing in this verse, that As Krishna is saying, if you follow the regulative principles, no meat eating, no gambling, no intoxication, no illicit sex, completely antithetical to the hippie movement, Prabhupada was teaching, that's the only way one will become free. So we find that in the midst of this revolution, when Srila Prabhupada taught this, so many people caught onto it. So many young people caught onto it. They were Prabhupada's best customers, the hippies, at that time. Actually, in the very beginning of the Upadeshamrit, Srila Prabhupada quotes also the second verse of the Upadeshamrit, Srila Rupa Goswami's Nectar of Instruction. But the first verse, anybody remember the first verse? Yes, Vacha Vegam Manasha Krodha Vegam Jiva Vegam Udarupashta Vegam. Srila Rupa Goswami is saying that by the control of all these senses, one will then become eligible to do what? To control the world. One becomes the master, the spiritual master of the entire world. One becomes the control of the world. And how is this? That if one controls the senses, one becomes the master of the world. Because in this world today, who is ruling the world? Who is dictating in which way the world moves and doesn't move? The senses, isn't it? And because of the senses, the leaders who are succumbing to the control of their senses, they are pushing the world in different directions. So that person who's able to control their senses becomes the actual controller of the world. So we find, if we want to actually become free, to become liberated, then we have to practice sense enjoyment. So a devotee, when by the association of someone like Srila Prabhupada, his books, and Srila Prabhupada's devotees, they come into contact with true knowledge. Because of that association, they will naturally understand the true principle of freedom and what it takes. And Srila Prabhupada, he often quotes this one verse. I'll read out the English now from the Chaitanya Charitamrita. In his classes, it said, "O my Lord," now this is the consciousness of a devotee who has been struggling so hard with the mind and senses, and has come to some realization through knowledge by association of devotee. The devotee is thinking like this: "O my Lord, there is no limit to the unwanted orders of lusty desires. Although I have rendered these desires so much service, they have not shown any mercy to me. I have not been ashamed to serve them, nor have I even desired to give them up." Does this sound familiar to any of you? "O my Lord, O head of the Yadu dynasty, recently, however, my intelligence has been awakened, and now I am giving them up. Due to transcendental intelligence, I now refuse to obey the unwanted orders of these desires, and I now come to you to surrender myself at your fearless lotus feet. Kindly engage me in your personal service and save me." For how many years, how many lifetimes have we been servants of the unwanted orders and directions of our senses? But somehow we've been given an awakening by the mercy of the devotee. And this purport, Srila Prabhupada is then cautioning us not to fall back. After we've been awakened, don't fall back into the slumber of being subservient and a slave to the senses. And also, Prahlad Maharaj, he reveals a very, very big secret. And the secret only the devotees that are following in the disciplic succession know. Prahlad Maharaj says that simply by serving Krishna, by serving him, we ourselves become satisfied. Krishna does not need anything, Prahlad says. He's Purnam, he's full and complete in himself. But he gives the example. We've always heard this, right? By serving Krishna, you become satisfied. By making Krishna happy, you become happy. And Prahlad says, just by the simple example, that if you see yourself in a mirror, you are seeing your reflection. And if you start to decorate yourself, what is happening to your reflection in the mirror? it's also becoming decorated simultaneously. So Prahlad says, simply by serving Krishna, serving the senses of Krishna, we will become satisfied, our senses will become pacified and pleased. Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam Bhakti Ruchyate. Sarvapadi Vinin Muktam. Yes. By serving Krishna in this way, then automatically our senses. There's no other way. There's no other way to do it. So yes, by following these 4 principles, all the principles actually, for an initiated devotee, for a seriously practicing devotee, they are not just 4 principles, there are many principles. If one carefully reads the Nectar of Devotion, Bhakti Rasamrita of Sindhu, one will find that. And then Krishna says, by carefully following all these principles of freedom, prasadam adhigacchati, one gets the prasad, or the mercy of him, of Krishna, the full mercy of God. But if we are not vigilant, if we are not careful, then it will show in our practice. We will become unsteady. This unsteady devotional service, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur talks about it extensively in Madhurya Kadambini, Anishtita Bhakti, unsteady practice of devotional service. And therein, in that discussion, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he helps us by citing 5 obstacles to maintaining steadiness. Nishtita Bhakti, steady devotional service. These are very important. One obstacle to steady devotional service, or that will help us, or not help us, attract us to falling into unsteady devotional service, is the tendency to sleep. The tendency to sleep. It's not that we must not sleep. I mean, how many of us can survive without sleep? Many health issues can arise neurologically and physically from lack of sleep. That's not the point, that we mustn't sleep. Krishna teaches us in Bhagavad Gita how we must regulate sleep, diet, exercise, and recreation. In that way, take proper care of ourselves so we can become strong, have time and energy, vitality to practice Krishna consciousness. But sleep's important, but it's not overwhelmingly important that it should rule our day and our existence. And we can test ourselves. Like at 7:30 in the morning, someone tells us, "Okay, it's time for Srimad Bhagavatam class," and then what happens to us? Almost instinctively, we start to yawn. Does that happen to anybody? We instinctively start to yawn, right? And we may even start making excuses. Better I don't attend class. I'm already a little tired. I'll fall asleep anyway. So better I go and do it properly. If you're going to do something, don't do it half-baked. Do it properly. Just go to your room, go under covers and sleep, instead of sleeping in class. And everyone looks at me and laughs, right? Oh, the speaker today, I think I'll give it a miss. Different excuses will come. Or, I'm going to fall asleep anyway in class. Might as well I go and do something like chant my rounds or do some practical service instead of attending. So that idea of sleep gets in our way, and it can make us very intelligent. The mind sets in, the material intelligence sets in and guides us to avoid the regulative principle of attending class, because we have more important and even so-called spiritual things to do at that time that will come up. But it all depends on what you are really invested in. Because if someone tells you attend class, you may start yawning. But if someone tells you, hey, you've just won a brand new car, will you fall off to sleep? You're not going to fall off to sleep. Or if someone tells you, someone banged your car while parking, you're going to get up and run to your car. Oh, but this Bhagavatam class, that's not a big thing. It's okay. Let's chill out a little bit. No. So it all depends what you are really invested in. So that's the first obstacle, sleep or sleepiness. And the second obstacle Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur talks about is distraction. So many distractions. This takes a lot of effort to avoid distraction, to overcome it. And the third very important thing that we must be careful about is indifference. Indifference. there's a blank space, an empty space in my heart when it comes to devotional service. I really have no interest in service. It's not that I'm distracted or sleepy. It's just that I just don't want to do it. Just don't want to do it. Yeah? Regarding distraction, Krishna in the 3rd chapter of Bhagavad Gita, he says that kama esha, krodha esha, that this lust, it infiltrates, it penetrates throughout our consciousness, and especially it attacks our senses. And we start lusting after so many things that we see. Even in a temple, if you walk around, if you're afflicted by this obstacle of distraction because of lust, then even in a holy place, one will walk around and find opportunities to be distracted from Krishna's service right in Krishna's home. Isn't that amazing? How powerful the material intelligence and the mind that is attracted and guided by the material intelligence is. It's so powerful that even in a temple we can do that. It'll pull us away from devotional service. And this is an unnatural or disease condition. Therefore, Rupa Goswami says in the 7th verse of the Upadeshamrita, Syat Krishna Nama Charitadi Sitaptya Vidya. This disease is avidya, the disease of avidya. And Srila Rupa Goswami speaks about a person who has, anybody remember? Jaundice. Anyone ever had jaundice? Anyone ever had jaundice? They say you turn a little yellow, is that true? Yellow jaundice, you turn. And according to Rupa Goswami, and Prabhupada then, because he was a chemist, elaborates on this, he says that when one has jaundice, everything that one eats, especially sugar, tastes a little bitter. But the cure for jaundice is to continue taking sugarcane juice or rock candy, even though it tastes better. And after a while, it'll start to taste sweet because one will become cured. So similarly, we are, or the conditioned living entity is afflicted by the disease, the jaundice of avidya, of ignorance of our eternal constitutional position. And the only remedy, the age-old remedy is Shat Krishna Nama Charita, to constantly hear the sweet tasting holy name, the sweet pastimes and character about Krishna. Even though at first it was like, oh boy, do I have to sit here? I thought bhakti, I came to the temple, I thought bhakti was just going to be exciting and happy. Now I have to sit in the class and they talk about Puranjan and this allegory, and then they're going to start about the 5th canto and about creation and about the elements and how this and that. This is just too tedious. I just want to jump and dance and take prasadam and associate and laugh and talk and, be happy. No. For one to stay in that happy platform, the blissful platform of devotional service, one's foundation has to be very strong, very much rooted in the practice of maintaining the regulative principles of freedom. This is very, very essential. Very, very essential. We should accept the process as medicine. This is important. Everything that we have in the practice of devotional service is medicine to counteract our avidya, our disease of ignorance of our eternal position. And we must have trust and faith in the medicine. This is very important. We must have trust and faith, not just in the doctor, but in the medicine as well, that it will work if one carefully applies it. This is very important. And if one does that very carefully, then the effects of sleep, distraction, indifference, it will reduce in its potency amongst over us, and one will become steady. Another founding father, I think he was, of the USA, Benjamin Franklin, he said, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. In other words, prevention is better than cure. It's very important. So to be careful, to be vigilant on all these attractive snares of Maya is very important to prevent ourselves from falling down. And how does a person fall? the material energy Maya Devi, she comes before us with a very nice advertisement and a very nice attractive package of which is customized for each and every one of us, with so many innumerable opportunities to fall away from the process of devotional service. There are 8,400,000 species of life. Imagine you go to Disney World or to an amusement park. They have 8,400,000 rides. You're never going to leave there, right? And they are all, so to speak, free. Right? You can get onto any one that you want to. Well, that's what the advertising says, but there's fine print there that we didn't read. 8,400,000 rides. Get on the ride of your life. So there's unlimited opportunity to enjoy that Maya provides. So many things, allurements are there. But we find Queen Kunti, she prays. She prays a very interesting verse when speaking to Krishna. Janmaishvarya shruta shribhi edamana madhapuman naiva hartya vidatum va tama kinchana gochara. That to avoid the allurements of all that Maya has to offer. And she presents the 4 topmost allurements. High birth, aristocracy, opulence, being born in a wealthy family, being very wealthy, being very learned, Shruta, and Shri, being very beautiful, having a beautiful body. One can fall away if one gets attracted to these 4 key aspects of Maya's presentations, Maya's alluring package to us. One will fall away. The only way to avoid it is to be very, very humble. Tvama kinchana gochara. To be very, very humble. Because Maya can infiltrate, can attack us at any point in our lives. And one of the main ways that Maya enters into our consciousness is through the doorway of pride. Therefore Queen Kunti is saying, what do you have to be proud of, Janma, Aishvarya, Shruta and Shri? If one is proud of that, which is temporary in any case, one becomes Mada Puman, one becomes intoxicated. Can you reason with an intoxicated person? You can't. Ever try to reason with an intoxicated person? Very difficult. Very difficult. So in order to counteract pride entering into the doorway of our consciousness, one must maintain humility. This is important. Because pride is the way Maya enters. And we can think, I thought about this yesterday with regard to this topic of pride. And we can consider how careful we have to be. There are certain attitudes. Pride is an attitude one has. And it comes out in certain outlooks that we may have, certain dispositions we may have. And one of them is, especially for devotees, this is more in relation to myself. So this is to myself. If it helps you, it's well and good, but don't think this class is now an opportunity for Swarup Damodar to make some points, but it's really for myself. One way of pride entering in the doorway of our consciousness is that I am such a good speaker, such a good preacher. What to speak of being a better preacher than anyone else? I'm just better than anyone else anyway. Leave aside everything else. I'm just a better person. So this is one way pride enters. And that idea comes into my mind sometimes. It definitely does. I don't know if it happens to you all, but sometimes it comes in. Another one is, I'm actually following this process. I must be liberated. Right? I'm a Jivan Mukta. Why do I feel that I am liberated? Because I'm initiated. I'm in ISKCON. I'm not just initiated, I'm second initiated. I'm a Brahmin. I was the temple president here. I'm a big man. What do you all know? What do you all know? Like that. And then we can also justify our cheating tendency. This is how pride comes in. I know there are these principles, but I've been around for a long time. How long have you been around, Prabhu? Not long. You have no idea how long I've been. Over 30 years. I've seen a lot of things. I know a lot of people. I know everyone's problems. From the GBC to the gurus to the temple. I've been around. So don't tell me about the Mangala Arati, don't tell me about attending class, of chanting 16 rounds. I've been there, I've done that, I know it all. I'm entitled. So pride can come in like that, very easy. Pride can come in. It opens the door. And then when we start to justify like this, it keeps Maya in our consciousness. It keeps it there. Mangala Arati is happening, but I need my sleep. You do not understand. I need my sleep. You do not know my body. You do not know my mind and what I'm going through. If only I have 2 or 3 hours of sleep. So what does it mean? Sleeping through sunrise is unhealthy for spiritual life and material life. But I need this. We'll justify ourselves in so many ways. And about 16 rounds, I've chanted for so many years already. And we'll hear stories of Prabhupada giving apparently some leeway to one devotee. It's okay, he's doing so much of service, he doesn't need to chant 16 rounds. We can think that also applies to me. There was one very special devotee in Vrindavan that Srila Prabhupada said, no, for him it's okay. But I've never heard Prabhupada say that about anyone else. So we may think like that. And then we'll look at other devotees, especially young devotees coming in, and they are really applying themselves to the full morning program and chanting and attending programs. And so what do these people know? They're putting on a show. I've been around for so long. So we must be very careful of this pride and justification to enter. No one can teach me anything. I know everything. I'm so close to my spiritual... all these things you can relate that they really identify with me. I'm so close to my spiritual master. I'm so close to many senior devotees. One can become very proud in this way. And you'll find after some time, very experienced devotees will look at this person, look at me and say, time will tell. And then Krishna arranges in a very appropriate way, fall from that proud platform. What does the Bible say, or biblical saying? Pride cometh before a fall. So if you want to learn how to fall, become proud. Proud of all these things that I have mentioned. So one has to be very, very careful. So there's one way, or there's many ways rather, just taking in from those points that I've mentioned, how to slam the door very effectively on Maya. One is, we must really be very clear. I am a conditioned soul. I am not liberated. I am not a liberated person. Rather, we must constantly say this, I am the servant of the servant of the servant of the servant of Krishna. Srila Prabhupada says that if one can really see oneself like that, a servant of the servant of the servant, and say that 1,000,000 times removed, then one is liberated. He said that, then one is liberated. So we should always think ourselves, when we get up in the morning, I am not liberated. I am not entitled. I am not deserving of this position and that position. No. And we should never justify ourselves finding excuses for my inability to follow in certain ways. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, one should not be lazy. One should always be active and enthusiastic. And Prabhupada says, one must be very careful and attentive that even though one may be reading scripture, one may be studying Bhakti Shastri, Bhakti Vaibhav, so many courses are there. No. That's there. We must still be very careful. Studying scripture alone won't save you. One has to apply it under the guidance of the spiritual master. And of course, the converse is sometimes there. Sometimes devotees may think, I'm doing enough service. I'm very visible in all the programs. Why do I have to read? Oh, no. A few weeks ago, I think it was Bhakti Chaitanya Maharaj gave the Chaitanya Charitamrita class. And in the purport, Srila Prabhupada says that if you do not read all the books, you will simply fall down into eating and sleeping. Isn't it? Remember that? Very strong statement. So anyway, here are some very important points for consideration of how to close the door on the Maya of pride entering. And then slowly making us lax in our strict attempt to be very cautious, Shurashya Dhara, on the razor-like edge of spiritual life. At the same time, in his purport, Srila Prabhupada also offers a caution and some encouragement as well, which is, comforting in many ways. He quotes the verse spoken by Narada Muni in the 5th chapter of the 1st canto. Tyaktva swadharmam charanam bhujam harer bhajan apakvo tapated yato yati. That, what's the translation? One who has forsaken his material occupations to engage in the devotional service of the Lord may sometimes fall down while in an immature stage. Yet there is no danger of his being unsuccessful. On the other hand, a non-devotee, though fully engaged in occupational duties, does not gain anything. So even though one may have been afflicted by pride, may have been falling over these obstacles that Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that are there in the path to attain steady devotional service, even though one may fall down, and they may think, there's no hope for me now. What's the point? Rather I just leave. But this verse is clearly saying, no, it's never lost. Similar to the statement of Krishna in the 2nd chapter, right, of Bhagavad Gita, Neha bikramo naso asti pratyavaya na vidyate svalpamapi asya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat. That whatever the devotee has done, unsteady or steady, Krishna holds on to it. He keeps it for that devotee. And it's also a caution for us who may be seeing a person who is having difficulties, never to write anyone off. There's never been an instance throughout Vedic history where someone was written off. No one has ever been written off in the practice of devotional service. Even Ravana Lord Ram was open to accepting Ravana and accepting him as a friend. The verse says, as a friend, only if he did one thing. Just bring back Sita. That was all. I'll accept you as a friend. So no one can be written off. But we must just be very cautious and move along with care and vigilance and humility. But never write anyone off. In Juhu temple at the moment, we have been staying for a number of months. There's one wonderful devotee there, I won't mention names, but a wonderful devotee, a very senior member of our institution who served on the highest levels of our movement as a spiritual master, a sannyasi, very, very wonderful. He, really amazing. But recently went through some challenges in his spiritual life. But from that highest level, after experiencing difficulties, and I was thinking to myself, if I was on that high level with disciples, with so much of accolades and reputation, if I had gone through that, I would just hide away in a cave somewhere for the rest of my life. I was thinking about that. Because that's also a form of pride, actually. That pride and embarrassment are somewhat related. Right? Because my pride has been so effective, but now that I'm embarrassed, I can't come forward. But this devotee, he's like the most exemplary of all the devotees there in the temple at the moment. Every morning he's there for the full morning program. He's older than everybody else, senior to absolutely everybody else, practically in the whole of India. But he's there every day, full morning program, full everything, and never asks to lead or speak or anything. Right? He just focused on the encouragement and the insurance that bhakti gives, that no matter what one's condition is, no matter what one's challenges are, Krishna will take care of that person. And whenever we see him, all the devotees today, even when they see him, they go and offer obeisances, even though he doesn't like it. And some people are sentimentally offering obeisance. That's fine because he's a Prabhupada disciple, senior. But many devotees have told me, and I feel the same, when I offer him obeisances, is because he's the best example of a devotee. That no matter what disturbances he's been through, he's still fixed on the path of devotional service. Apichet sudaracharo bhajate mam ananya bhak sadureva samantavya that one must still be considered a sadhu. That person must still be considered a sadhu. So this is very important. Just because someone has had challenges, it should not serve as a discouragement, nor should it serve as an opportunity for writing anyone off. It must never happen. And then at the end of the purport, Srila Prabhupada quotes the second verse of Rupa Goswami's Upadeshamrita, Nectar of Instruction, Atyahara Prayasascha. And very nicely, I wish I read this more carefully when I was studying the Nectar of Instruction. Where is it? Prabhupada very nicely shows the sequence of how one flows to the other. And it starts off with eating too much, atyahara, and how one leads to another. From atyahara, eating or collecting too much, one will endeavor too much to maintain one's practice of eating or collecting too much. One will endeavor, and this is called prayas. And then from prayas, because one is over-endeavoring, then challenges with the rules and regulations. Because you are focused on something else, then inattentions to the rules and regulations will happen, and one will become either very lax in it, or one will put on a show of becoming very serious on it. And that is called niyamagraha. Niyamagraha or niyamagraha. And then because of that, one will mix with unfavorable persons because of prayas, jana sangha, and then one becomes lolyam, becomes tainted with greed. And these becomes very unfavorable to the path of devotional service. So this verse and purport especially, is very, as Prabhupada says, very significant for those desiring to elevate themselves to a higher level of Krishna consciousness. Okay, I'll stop here. Are there any comments or questions? Yes, Jai Sachinandan Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, thank you very much. You're speaking about the principles of freedom. On the growth platform, we find it not so difficult to follow. But the subtle, like you mentioned, pride and the anathas and the false ego, they're very deeply rooted. Even as devotees, we experience that, isn't there? This envy is still there, this very deeply rooted, consciousness. And this is one of the last messages to leave us, especially the false ego, even in advanced stage of devotional service.
Yeah, therefore one needs a spiritual master. One has to understand the need of having a spiritual master to identify these subtler aspects, subtler obstacles in our consciousness. And one has to submit to the spiritual master, place faith in the spiritual master, or in the Guru Tattva. Because sometimes the spiritual master is not present to deal and identify directly with us. Of course, the spiritual master is always speaking to us, as Prabhupada says at the end of the Chaitanya Charitamrita in his concluding words, that I'm always feeling the presence, the association of my spiritual master, and he's always guiding me. But sometimes we are so covered that we cannot see the guidance. Of course, I'm sure all of us have had the experience that reading Srila Prabhupada's books or reading our spiritual master's books, something just pops out from the book and it hits us. Oh, this was meant for me, right? But that doesn't happen very often, at least to me it doesn't happen very often. But at least when we willingly submit ourselves to guidance in the association of devotees, including our Diksha Guru, expanding the number of Shiksha Gurus, not just in a sentimental way, but in a meaningful way, allowing the association of devotees to purify us of our bad tendencies, to diagnose ourselves, to diagnose us, then we'll find we will get helped with pride and envy and all these the second cleaning of the Gundicha consciousness, the Gundicha state of our hearts, right? It's described in that, that's coming up in a few weeks, right? The cleansing of the Gundicha temple. The first cleansing was the gross cleansing. A lot came out. But it's described by the Acharyas, which was a bigger pile of dirt. The second cleansing, the finer cleansing, which was labdha, puja, pratishta, all these things, name, fame, desire for prestige, being famous, that was the bigger thing. For that, we cannot do it ourselves. We need help of a spiritual guide, of spiritual guides. Bhakti Swami Maharaj very famously said that in the beginning the neophyte devotee at least has faith in one person, their initiating spiritual master. But as they advance, as they mature in devotional service, they will find the ability, they will have the ability and the maturity to surrender to more persons. So we need more help. Because Guru Maharaj is not here all the time to see how we are directly behaving and to call us out on it. Right? So we need more help. So this is a very important part of maturing in devotional service, to submit ourselves to people around us for guidance. Now, having said that, there's also guidelines and considerations of how that is to be done. That's also important. But the principle must be there, must be very much there. All right, thank you very much. Now we will close. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki.